First, we have Taina McField. She is the Associate Dean for Strategy, Global Programs, and Entrepreneurship at Tufts University's Tisch College of Civic Life. She brings decades of experience in philanthropy, institutional change, and social justice programming. Taina previously led MIT's Community Innovators Lab and was a program officer at the Nathan Cummings Foundation, focusing on racial and economic equity and climate justice. An Afro-Latina with roots in Costa Rica and Honduras, Taina's career is defined by her commitment to transformational systems, thinking, and community-centered strategy. When asked who her favorite bridge builder and why, Taina responded with a quote, "Faith is the first factor in the life devoted to service. Without it, nothing is possible. With it, nothing is impossible." This quote was given by Mary McLeod Bethune. She exemplifies bridge building through her unwavering belief in service education and collective progress, principles that continue to inform Taina's work. Next, we have Samuel Gebru, I know as Professor Gebru, a social entrepreneur, community organizer, educator, advocate, and policy analyst with 2 decades of political and nonprofit experience in the United States and East Africa. He is the CEO of Black Line Strategies and a professor of the practice of political science at Tufts University, where he also teaches with the Tufts University Prison Initiative of Tisch College, and is a senior advisor at the Tufts Clinical and Translational Science Institute in the School of Medicine. He has devoted over half of his life to creating and shaping initiatives, building partnerships and coalitions, and advocating for public policies that advance opportunity and justice for all. Samuel is a former candidate for city council in his hometown of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he remains deeply involved in a range of domestic and foreign policy issues. Next, we have Kiersten Hatch. She is a graduating senior at Harvard College of Charlotte, North Carolina, and an incoming 1L law school student. She studies honors government on the political economy track, environmental science and public policy, and Spanish. A Charlotte, North Carolina native, she is passionate about equity and political advocacy. She has served as Director of Diversity and Engagement at the Harvard Institute of Politics, co-chair of the Harvard Undergraduate Black Community Leaders, advocacy director for the Harvard Votes Challenge, and more. Kiersten's leadership reflects her deep commitment to justice through collaboration and youth mobilization. When Kiersten was asked who her favorite bridge builder is and why, she named her mother. In quote, one of my favorite bridge builders is my mom, Dr. Alicia Hatch. As an elementary school principal, she led a school merger to combat racial segregation in our local school district. She has furthered this work through conducting research on school integration models. As her first teacher, she instilled in her a love of learning and a heart to serve. And last but not least, we have Ymbar Polanco Pino. He is a PhD candidate in civil and environmental engineering at Tufts University. Originally from Venezuela, his research bridges STEM, policy, and community organizing to advance environmental justice. Ymbar's work emphasizes culturally relevant pedagogy and elevates marginalized voices in shaping climate adaptation and sustainable development. He is an advocate for integrating science with civic leadership and public engagement. When asked who his favorite bridge builder and why is, Ymbar responded, "My favorite bridge builder is Dr. Robert Bullard, often called the father of environmental justice. His work has been instrumental in highlighting how race and class intersect with environmental policies, shaping the movement to ensure that vulnerable communities have a sustainability and climate action." Without further ado, we will be getting into our panel. Thank you all for joining us, both here on the panel and in the audience. My name is Wanci. I am a recent graduate of Tufts University where I studied biopsychology, and I'm currently participating in a fellow in higher education leadership with the Office of Institutional Inclusive Excellence at Tufts University, and I will be the moderator for this panel. And with that, we are going to get started. Okay, awesome. So the first question that I have for you guys is not even getting into the meat of your work or anything like that, but talking about definitions. How do you define political engagement in your work and communities? So again, how do you define political engagement? And I'm thinking who I want to put on the spot, and it'll be Professor Gebru.
No, it'll be her.
It'll be Kiersten.
Kiersten.
Okay, pass it to Kiersten.
Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you for having me here today, Wanci. When I saw this question, I initially thought about the ways that the definition of political engagement, civic engagement has been combined. I like to think of political engagement as a very expansive concept, really just including the ways that our lives are political lives and that the personal is political. So all the things that we're engaging in, the communities and experiences that we have are inherently political. But specifically for political engagement, I think of not only like voting and campaigning and advocating for different issues, but also the ways that we interact with our governmental systems, whether that's through receiving social security checks and interacting with Medicaid and temporary assistance to needy families, or the ways that we engage with our local officials. If they're reaching out to us, are we reaching out to them? And then also the ways that we join in community, whether that's like just through normal community building or something to achieve a political goal. So expansive definition, but I think it's important as we like frame the ways that particularly underrepresented communities engaged in political life.
I'll go next. Yeah. So hi everyone, Sam here. So I would say yes to all of that. And when I think of political engagement, I think of community organizing. So I got my start as a community organizer. Really building people-to-people connections at a grassroots level is really important. I think that's something that we have really forgotten about in this country. Just building on the previous panel, part of why we're so polarized in this country is we just don't talk to each other anymore, right? And it's natural human psychology. You fear what you don't know. That makes sense. You fear what you don't know. You hate what you fear, and then that it becomes easier to dehumanize what you hate, and then from there, violence is acceptable. So, when I think of political engagement, I think you have to start with community organizing. I think you have to start with relationship building. Those who know me know that I love coffee and I love ice cream. I also love dogs because I have a dog now. So it's like, and you can get me to do anything with those three things. If you're like, hey, let's grab coffee, absolutely. You want to go to get ice cream? I'm here for that. You want to go to a dog park? Sign me up, right? And so building community and think about political engagement, I think we really should start at a community level, at a grassroots level, getting to know your neighbor. I mean, one of the beautiful things that I just go back to my undergrad experience, like living in a dorm was really fun. Like it was like an apartment building, but like all the doors were unlocked and it was just, one big happy family almost. I'm seeing maybe not your doors unlocked, but but then you grow up and you move on in life. And how many of maybe because you're undergrads, I think, right, but like in the future, I don't know if you're really going to know your neighbor like that. I don't know my neighbors. It was only when I got a dog that I started building a relationship with the dog owners in my building. Even then, swear to God, I don't know their names. I know their dog names. And so I say all this to say that like building actual relationships with our neighbors is really important. And with that level of foundational trust, then you can actually discuss the thorny issues of the day. But it's after you've built that trust. And so, when I think of political engagement, I really think of community organizing. I think of community building at a grassroots level. I think of relationship building. And through that, we can engage politically with each other and with our government.
You want to go down the line?
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Taina. I would echo everything that's been said before. I'll just add a few additional things. Just to say, for me, political engagement takes on a variety of forms. It could be church gatherings, can be about community engagement and political engagement. Also, arts and culture has been a huge portion of mobilization. When I think about political engagement, artists have been some of the most fearless activists on the front line. It's also about political education that takes on a variety of forms, and also things, I think Sam mentioned this already, like get out the vote, door knocking, community organizing, and letting your voice be heard through social media or other forms of communication. I'll just add that in there because of the political environment we're in right now.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. I think everything that's been said has been more than, right, like accurate and relevant. I don't have a background in policy and things of that sort. I started getting more into it in graduate school, but I'm an engineer by training. And something that I've seen kind of be a through line is, and then all the things I've been shared is like the intention. It's like being very intentional about how you build a relationship, how you exist in your community. And then on my end is like who we engineer for, where we're engineering and how this impacts those people. So that's how I see political engagement in that sphere, which can obviously lead to so many travesties when there's no intention and it's just, oh, let's just cut a highway over wherever it's like the cheapest or gives us like the least amount of pushback. Things that we see all the time. And that's like, one of the like the lightest examples, but I see it a lot as intentional relationship building and an intentional pursuit of knowledge. So being educated on these topics, as once again, someone who wasn't always super in tune with everything going on, I was the more intention that I put into like the history and the dynamics that exist within my field and other fields and the intersections, I became a lot more politically engaged and would encourage others to do so as well. So yeah, I would say intention.
Yeah, and honestly, for this next question, we can go in reverse order because from what I know personally, I think that would be a good way to build off of it. Like you started by saying you had a background in engineering, and it's more recently that you've probably gotten more directly engaged with political engagement and community organizing. And then Dean McField, I know you also have that prior experience in MIT CoLab, working with engineers, people at MIT in that institution. We've talked about that a little bit. So all of that context to say, the question is like, what strategies have you found effective in mobilizing people across different sectors, grassroots, institutional, entrepreneurial, whatever sectors that you all navigate and are intersectionally rooted in? Like, what have you found to work in organizing people across those sectors?
I think familiarity. When you know somebody well and they know you, they can advocate for you and they can speak for you on your behalf. And I think what's one of the main scenarios that I'm thinking about is when I started my PhD, I was working with the National Renewable Energy Lab, the Department of Energy. And I was doing a fellowship and I was like an intern, but then I was doing research throughout the year. And I was put in a position where this project that I started, I was speaking for and representing that project in the Department of Energy peer review. So the different like departments of the government, they have like this review where they decide what's going to be funded and what's not going to be funded, at least previously. I'm not sure what all is going on right now, but in that time, there was this kind of like these sessions where folks would speak on, here's this project, here's, how much money we've had so far, and here's where it's going. And I spoke for my project and it ended up being successfully funded and it's still ongoing. But in that moment, thank you so much. But in that moment, I didn't realize how kind of high stakes it was. And I didn't realize how important it was that I was known by my manager and my manager's manager and supervisor, until we're at like this reunion and like this kind of event. And he's speaking on my behalf. He's like, Ymbar did this wonderful work and he presented for the whole department and they were more than happy with him. And they thought he was like, he had like years and decades within the field. Like they didn't know he was our intern. And I had no clue. I was like, I didn't know the stakes were that high that you just put me up here presenting in front of all these people with like a few $1 million like at stake. But from that project, we were able to fund a community organization event, strategy for our energy efficiency upgrades in commercial buildings in all of Denver and Aurora, Colorado. That's still ongoing right now. So I think I would have been put in that position had I not been trusted by my higher ups and had a relationship with them that they'd feel comfortable with me being in that position.
I think I'm going to take a slightly different take on answering this question. As I sit here, and I think many of you can identify with this, I wear like multiple hats. So in my work, I do not mobilize people in my work. I want to be clear, at Tufts University, I am an administrator. And so I think in my role at Tufts University, I organize. Right? I help to bring people together, help to set agendas and move things along. Outside of Tufts University, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and other things. I mobilize people outside of work. So what does that mean for me? I move them to action through different things that I do hands-on. And I think that's an important distinction because I heard someone in the last panel lament about like administrators who lie and promise to do more than they actually can. As an administrator, I'm very humbled and aware of the limitations and boundaries of my work. As a citizen outside of Tufts University, I am very in touch with my agency, who and what I have the power to move, and I move those things. So I just want to make that distinction in this space here.
Thank you for that.
Well, first I want to say hello to my D9 sister,
Ooh.
member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. But I think in thinking of this question, I come from a background of like campus organizing and also work that I did as a high school student. So obviously I'm, have probably the least experience of everybody up here. But I think from experiences organizing students on campus, one of the biggest things I've realized over the past few years has been the importance of authenticity and a genuine compassion and care for the people that you're organizing with. I think that in the campus environment, because things move so quickly and because the bureaucracy unfortunately can move very slowly, there's this sense of urgency that can sometimes degrade the trust between community members because you want to get everything out like this. And I've found that some of the most successful campaigns and initiatives I've been a part of have actually taken the time to build consensus in the community of interest. For example, in 2023, Harvard essentially had this issue where, issue is putting it lightly, but essentially there was an all Black dorm of students that were swatted by university police. And this was because there was essentially like, I wouldn't call it a prank call, but a malicious call that was sent to the administration, which they still haven't like really disclosed who was at fault for this. They're saying it's like people outside of campus, but calling saying, oh, there's like a hostage situation in this dorm. And this is in the middle of the night. University police come to this dorm with like, heavy duty guns and like, force these people to move out the dorm and, check them and all these things. But following this, Black students on campus felt, one, this was traumatizing to see their community members experience and go through. Also, just like for folks that have experienced gun violence and police brutality in their home cities and states, coming to campus and seeing that happens to their community members was also re-traumatizing. And then to make matters worse, the university released this like just really half-baked statement about it and like kind of just had some really poor messaging after it happened. So several students, including myself, worked to address this issue and hold the university accountable. One, to reckon with the harm caused by issues of public safety and mental health on campus. It kind of was like a nexus of different issues and like boiled over issues that we had, with lack of inclusion and a lack of a cultural center and not enough Black mental health professionals on campus. And then again, these like interactions with the university police. So I remember there was this kind of conversations about how to move forward. And, some folks, even myself included, pretty frustrated on the responses of some of my peers of like not feeling super comfortable standing up to administration and wanting to move forward as a collective. But what ended up happening that was probably the most powerful and effective aspect of that whole fallout and campaigning afterward was a group discussion between Black student unit organizations where 45 student organizations drafted a letter, an open letter to administration with several demands. And this caught the attention of news outside of Harvard. It caught the attention of the leaders. And then following that also, this is when I was like more involved with some of the organizing, but we ended up drafting a petition that got 500 signatures in 1 week to have an in-person town hall to discuss some of these issues that we were concerned about. And I think the through line through that was the importance of building consensus and seeing what the community actually wanted. Because if you just kind of try to gatekeep and say, well, these people are probably not going to be super involved anyway, so we just got to keep moving forward, you end up getting to a place where you're burnt out and only like 10 people are actually still involved in the work. So I think the authenticity and like consensus building is one of the most important things I've seen. And also, drawing from some of the work that I did before college, I did some organizing around the Crown Act to create some respectful and open rope for natural hair act in high school. And what I really appreciated was the intergenerational collaboration. And I know there's probably a question about this coming up, but I'll say quickly, like as a young person, I feel like we think we know everything, and I fear we don't. But what I enjoyed most was working with older Black women that were seasoned in this work of advocating in a hostile environment, which is the North Carolina State Legislature. And though we did not like get the Crown Act passed in that time, I learned so much from those women and still have those strong relationships. So whether or not like the initial goal gets accomplished, building and fostering those relationships is so important. And I think from that, it's just the importance of collaboration, like being humble and recognizing you.
Just three things I want to highlight, and then I get Sam to share. One is, in my work, I always try to understand, part of what I do outside of Tufts is I run a lobbying firm. So I'm a registered lobbyist in Massachusetts. I'm a social impact and first consultant. So, I have a range of clients, across different sectors that I work with. And what I'm always trying to do on their behalf is understand other people's interests, right? So, like, if I'm talking to a politician, if I'm talking to a community leader, or the chair of a civic organization or whatever, I'm not addressing them from where I think my interest lies in all this or where my client's interest lies, but really what should why should this thing matter to them and from what vantage point? And so putting yourself in other people's shoes is always really important. Trying to understand, okay, well, if I'm talking to Senator so-and-so, all right, well, like, why should you care about this topic? And let me tell you why it matters for your reelection. And let me tell you why it matters for your public image and whatever, right? I tell my students all the time, the top priority of any politician ever is to get reelected. Everything else is secondary. Getting reelected is the most important thing, because if you don't get reelected, then nothing else matters. And so, seeing it from their vantage point always helps. So just in general, just from a negotiating perspective, just finding other people's interests and assessing it and meeting them where they're at is always helpful, I think. The second thing is knowing, and this sort of ties into what the panel of our presidents before, knowing who the decision makers are versus who the influencers are is really important. And I talk to my class about this all the time and my students that, sometimes you throw your outrage at people who are not actually decision makers. And sometimes, you throw your outrage at influencers and instead of realizing that they could be your allies, you've then alienated them. And so just getting a sense of like understanding, and term we like to throw around a lot is stakeholder mapping, right? So just understanding who are the stakeholders in whatever scenario, situation, project, company, whatever, anything that you're in, right? Like, who are the stakeholders? Who are the people that you need to get to know? Who are going to be your allies? Who are going to be your opponents, right? Like, getting to that, who are the decision makers, the actual shot callers, and then who are the influencers, right? And so just and understanding that is always really helpful. And through that, you can actually begin to affect change on a strategic level. And then the third thing is building coalitions. It's so important, right? So, there's a proverb, my friends from Ethiopia, there's a proverb that we like to use a lot. 50 lemons for one man is a burden, but for many it's a jewel. And thinking about, the power of building coalitions, particularly with people who don't look like you, right? And just sort of think about the theme of the song. I didn't fully get excited. I have a lot of favorite bridge builders. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I think, to some extent, it's not sound weird, but like, as a Christian, I think Jesus is a really great bridge builder. And in the sense of like, we're so damn judgmental nowadays, right? And like, homeboy was hanging out with tax collectors and prostitutes. And it's a whole different scenario where, nowadays we throw people in a box and we cancel you. And we label you in a way that demeaning or derogatory. So I think like, building those bridges is important, building coalitions with people who don't look like you. And we love to talk about the civil rights movement and how wonderful the time that was. And I still think that we still are in the civil rights movement, but a lot of those major pieces of legislation in the 60s and subsequently happened because of bridge building. We had all types of people who were marched on the streets. We had all types of people who were involved, people who we will never know of in state legislatures, in city halls, in the Congress, elsewhere, really moving on different issues. And so building those coalitions is really important. One example that I'll just share, and I don't ever say that you don't have enough experience, Kiersten. I got my start in high school as well. So this weekend is Eid, right? Ending of Ramadan. When I was a senior in high school, my Muslim classmates came up to me and they were like, "Hey Sam, we don't have a holiday on the calendar in Cambridge Public Schools at the time, and you're a student organizer on campus. You're doing all these things. Would you be willing to help us put this effort together to advocate for Muslim holiday Cambridge?" And I was like, "Oh, cool, this makes sense.
Christian holiday on the calendar, we have Jewish holiday on the calendar, and at the time, it's back a while, we had a significantly growing Muslim population in Cambridge, and in fact, there were more Muslims than Jews in Cambridge at the time, and the Muslim and Christian population was probably fairly equivalent in Cambridge, particularly in certain parts of the city where we saw a huge growth in Muslims, and so I said, all right, this makes sense, and we had to come up with all sorts of arguments for why this should happen, and one of them obviously was, well, on any given Eid, depending, there's 2 Eids in a year, depending on which one falls during the school year, you have potentially hundreds of students that are missing from school because they're celebrating with their families at the mosque, etc. So then that becomes a school truancy issue, right? And that's a problem. Administrators care about that. You have faculty and staff who are Muslims who may not become so that, that's also an administrative issue. So we were building all sorts of issues beyond just like, oh, it's fair or just or whatever. We have to get people where they were. We built this wonderful coalition. We created what was it called? We had a Muslim Arab Awareness Club, which is funny because like most of us were not Muslim or Arab in it, including me. We had atheists in it, we had all sorts of people in the group. But part of it was we were educating our classmates on the differences between Muslims and Arabs and blah blah blah. We put together assemblies. I wish I said assemblies, and we educated people on this topic. And then we also worked with a member of the Cambridge School Committee who became our champion on this issue and was the person who filed a motion with the school committee to allow Muslim holiday on the calendar. So after an entire school year of organizing, we brought this issue before the school committee, where student support, parent support, faculty support, staff support, right? We have the principals behind us, like everybody's behind us. And at that time, the school committee unanimously adopted the Muslim holiday on the calendar. And so the way that it works, we had to do our research. So we spoke with the chaplaincy at Harvard, which helped us, understand. So, if there are 2 Eids in a year, which one takes precedence, why, blah, blah, blah. So we had to figure out all that stuff. And, Cambridge became the first public school district in Massachusetts to have a Muslim holiday in 2010. And so I say all this to say that, building that coalition of unlikely people, right? We had students and staff and faculty. We had all types of religions and genders and whatever in the room. Like that's how we got it done, right? If it was just one type of person that was advocating for it, maybe it would have been taken seriously. And to be clear, our decision makers, the school committee, they were receiving death threats. They were receiving, threats of lawsuits from other parts of the country, just saying, "How dare you, honor Muslims and how dare you celebrate the holiday?" But we were really fortunate to have school committee members, all the officials who were, as we said earlier, standing on business, who were, people of courage and willing to say, "No, look, we're responding to our constituents and their needs." So, again, understanding people's interests, knowing decision makers versus influencers. And the third thing is just building those coalitions for that effective.
Yeah, you guys are all amazing. And I like you all work in different realms. But there's a lot of underlying similarities and parallels to everything you guys shared there. And for my next question, I want to stem off something that you were mentioning, Kiersten, that was striking a chord for me just a bit. Talking about like how you have to build that community consensus when you're trying to, create impact and affect change. And you can't like really move on your own because by then you'll have 10 people that are still with you. And that context is setting the question of like, how do you maintain integrity and community trust as you guys do your work? Because in a circumstance like right now, and even just in general, as leaders in our respective communities and in our respective sectors, like you have to move at a pretty fast pace. You have to constantly be putting out fires while also building things at the same time and maintaining those relationships. So yeah, how do you guys do that? And what are your thoughts on the general idea of staying rooted in your integrity and having those community relationships while still being effective, impactful, and proactive in your work as opposed to reactive? Anybody can pick that up and start.
I'm going to go on something Kiersten said earlier. You hit the nail on the head. When I decided to run for city council in Cambridge in 2017, I decided a year before. So, and before I did, I met with a lot of different people in the community to
get a sense of what they wanted me to focus on, etc. And I met with some of my mentors, and one of them, a former mayor in the city, she sat me down at her house and looked at me and she said, you know, the most important word in politics is authenticity. You said that earlier, right? And I still use it because voters can smell bullshit. And you know, like him or not, Donald Trump is extremely authentic. People, that's why he is beloved, even despite all of the lawsuits and allegations and convictions and all that stuff. You know, the man speaks his mind, and there's a certain segment in this country and throughout the world that really likes that, that gets drawn to that as the basis of populism. And authenticity is something that I think we should be uplifting more in politics and all sorts of aspects of our lives. So, you know, when you think about like staying rooted, one of the things that I do that's very important to me is I have a really good circle of friends. In high school, I was watching this video that was talking about how everyone, especially if you want to be a change maker, which I think all of you in this room are or want to be, you have to have your own personal board of directors. Right? Your own personal board of directors, your own circle of advisors, whatever term you want to use. But this is your circle that keeps you grounded, that keeps you rooted, and that was always real with you. And you know, I have a few of these good friends who will just always chat me at any point in time. And you know, sometimes will say things to me that I don't want to hear at the moment, but I really do appreciate afterwards. You know, a mentor of mine said to me years ago, advice, especially unsolicited advice, is like cough medicine. It's doesn't taste good, it's bitter, but it's usually good for you. And so I think you know, just having people around you who will keep you real, who will keep you grounded, is really important. I think, you know, especially in politics, the world that I operate in, there's a lot of sycophants, there's a lot of people who are just asking certain, you just want to climb up the ladder and, you know, move into circles. You know, I get it. Like these rooms are powerful, they're beautiful, they're ornate. There's a lot of like titles and all sorts of stuff in the room. Like I get it. You know, you can get distracted by trappings of politics. And you know, proximity is everything. At the same time, though, staying grounded, staying rooted, having a circle around you that's you know that has ears to the ground, that understands what community is thinking is really important. You know, I benefit from that, and I try to do that to others as well. And if you want to, you try to move throughout your careers, whether it's in education or beyond in the career world, think about that. Make sure you have a personal growth. Make sure you have to go to who can always give you their honest, unfiltered, undigested opinion, even if you don't want to hear it.
Any other thoughts there, or I can?
I'd say, with me, like, I think with authenticity, piggybacking and oh my gosh, but yes, amen to everything you just said because I think not only can voters smell BS, but like your fellow community members can smell it. And I feel like what I've appreciated again about some of the more successful social campaigns that I've been a part of, particularly a groundswell effort to dename one of the houses in Harvard College that's named after a slave owner was that this was built off of community consensus from day one. Harvard released the Legacy of Slavery Report in 2023, detailing their history of wealth building and power building that was rooted in the transatlantic slave trade. And as I came into my role as political action chair for GASA, or the Harvard Students Association, we hosted a community conversation right after that report was released. And one of the main things that our community wanted to push for was denaming and renaming. And from there, that was where this now about 3 years long campaign is engendered. And what I appreciated most again is that not only like am I able to articulate to the people that have the power, to the point about power mapping, that this was a groundswell effort, but then like when we went through the process, this year-long process of the administrative faculty committee getting insights from community members, we had some of the folks in the room that were able to speak authentically to the experiences that they experience in their hometowns, particularly in the South, where you see that reckoning with Confederate legacy and like the renaming and changing of these monuments and statues and names, able to speak to that personal experience in the rooms with the people that have the power. Which I really appreciated because it's not like you have to BS for them. Like this is our community's effort, and we're able to speak to it personally. So I think, remaining grounded in your community and in the experiences that you have and that your community has makes when you get in those rooms all the more like important and authentic.
I'll just add quickly. I think the most important thing in the relationship building is show up and plan to stay alive. I think part of the challenge is people come around cyclically for elections or when they need something or when they want to push an agenda or get you to buy something. And when it gets tough in the community, those same people cannot be relied upon. They are not accountability partners. And so show up, stay, and do more listening than you do talking if you're actually in service.
I'll also quickly add, I think some of that's been resonating with me lately. I was speaking to some previous alum of a program that I'm in, a fellowship program, and some of that they said that really stands out to me. He's currently a VP of an engineering, environmental engineering company. He told me to just do good work. And that's something that really resonates with me when I think of also like my parents and like the family I come from, where there wasn't always a kind of like a political lens to it. Like I just knew that they always did good work. And that in and of itself is what allowed me to have a foundation of community in every kind of facet of my life, where I could always have those people that I could count on to check me and give them the access to my life and my personal life to be able to give me advice, things of that sort. And something that was brought up earlier that I think about a lot is Jesus had 3 guys that were in him in his highest moment and his lowest moment, although he had 12 disciples. So there's, even within your friend group, there's always like a few that it's like, okay, I want you to have access to me when I'm in the dumps when I'm going through it, but also when I'm in the highest. So I won't think that think beyond that and let pride get to me and lose the sense of humility that's grounded me throughout this entire journey. So just doing good work and then being true to yourself and being a man and woman of your word.
Thank you guys for that. And this next part is about like maybe personal practices or even I'd say personal, communal, whatever it may be, but like how do you guys avoid burnout in your work? A lot of the problems that we're trying to tackle and challenges that we're facing and we're being tasked to lead in those fronts and those attempts can be very draining. And also outside of work, there's responsibilities. I in the last panel brought it up, like, people have different relationships and different things outside of the work that still demand their presence, their capacity, and their mind, body, and spirit. But the work can sometimes be very draining, and burnout is very real. How do you guys go about balancing that, making your life holistic, keeping yourself healthy in all of these different buckets so that you can put your humanity first?
I feel like, since we're doing this
Okay,
pattern,
back and forth.
I'm going to keep it going. To echo off of the last thing I just shared, one of my good friends, he's currently in the NIH, and in the church spheres that I navigate, oftentimes I feel like some people aren't as politically active as I am or as aware as I am, and I think in a time right now, it's like faith, especially the Christian faith, has been used as a complete power trip and just abuse of power in many ways. So I find it very important for me to connect with folks that see the lens that I'm seeing and having love as the first and foremost character trait and an action that we should be taking in. And he and I, we checked in for like 3 hours, and we had just hung out a couple of days before when I was in DC, and that for both of us was like really, really helpful because things that are going on both here on Tufts campus and on his work campus, where we're just seeing this overstep and power, just more, just everything. And I definitely needed someone that could hear me out, and for me to also make space for him. And I feel like along those same lines, my lab mates in the back and our advisor,
she gave us like a Hall of Fame fourth quarter speech a few days ago, given a lot of the things that are going on campus, and it really stuck with me. She said something along the lines of, I'm not planning on changing the work that I'm doing. I'm not planning on stepping back or changing any of these things, although our NSF thing has been flagged, this, that, and the other. She's like, I show up for times like this, and the work matters for times like this. And there's never been a time where this hasn't been happening or it's not going to continue happening. So I'm going to pull up, and boy, man, I held that, and I passed that on to my homeboy. He's like, oh man, he's like, I need that recorded. I was like, we should have recorded that Zoom meeting, right? But those conversations, having people that can hold those different aspects of you and things that are true to you, those things speak volumes, and you can hold on to that like kind of like in a jar, like pull from it later on. And I think it's a good idea to write things down and keep note of it. Yeah.
I'm gonna really say I'm not a great at the balance. Yeah, I do a lot, always doing a lot, and the things that I try to do that help me figure out when to do more and to sit down, just be very clear about what my purpose is. And in some seasons I'm doing a lot, and in other seasons I recognize that I have too much on my back, and this is an issue or a problem or a situation that I should be carrying for people. And so I enlist those people and help move along and do the thing that I'm not going to sit down from doing, but I recognize that I don't have to carry it alone. The things that I try to do to just stay healthy, I'm an avid cyclist, I do outdoor running, and I have a huge faith practice. So those are the things that I do like on the side, but I'm not always balance.
Real.
I think for me, I also have had seasons where I'm just not good at it. But I will say, like, frankly, in this moment, I'm kind of in a season of waiting and like just regrouping. I very heavily extended myself in the first couple of years of being on campus and experienced a lot personally, and had to take a significant step back from organizing and the work that I really enjoy and love. And I think also, I mean, it's just like senior year, like writing my thesis up time for law school is kind of crazy. But I do, the thing that guided me into this season was like my faith, prayer, and counsel from the people that really care about my well-being. Because again, like the work is always going to be there, and like none of us here are going to be able to dismantle all the systems we want to dismantle and also build up all the systems we want to build even in our lifetimes. Like we are coming from a long legacy, and not just like in the Black community, but like since the dawn of time of people that just want to do good. So I think for me, I had to reckon with the fact that like, and even thinking back to myself, like summer 2023 when affirmative action fell, I like was crashing out because I just felt so powerless, like in the Supreme Court decision that has nothing to do with me and like what I was able to contribute in that moment. And that was part of really a catalyst for me taking this kind of introspective approach of like, okay, what is actually going to be my goal as I move through the next several decades of doing work to support my community and serve others. And I think it's recognizing the fact that because I'm not going to be able to build everything I want to build and dismantle everything I want to dismantle, I have to protect my peace. Like you have no other choice because like you could expend your entire life and literally like die doing this work and it's still not going to achieve every goal that you want to achieve. But I think going back to the thing I mentioned at first about like being in this season of waiting, I'm taking this time to learn from others and support in ways in this particularly hospital time that may not be as overt. Partially because I'm moving into a season where I can gain my expertise and hit the ground running as what I want to be, which is a public interest attorney, civil rights attorney. But also because again, like it's just sometimes you just have to take a step back, and you can feel very guilty about it. I felt very guilty about it for a while. But my prayer has been like, God, my duty is to you and only you. Like, help me maximize the decisions that I'm making to make an impact for others and to stay engaged in kingdom work. And I've been grateful that I've still been able to like make an impact in this season. I feel like of waiting and kind of taking a step back, but I realized again, like you're just not going to be able to like, as an individual person, you're not going to be able to do everything you want to do. So, do you ever find that balance? I don't know, but I think it's important to just recognize that and move from that space, and then say, well, what can I do in this moment? What can I do in the future to move?
So thank you. This is a great question. So what is I think it's important to note that balance is different for everybody, right? And it's what is balance for you may be different for me, etc. And you know, like I truly find joy in my work. I do. Like, am I working all the time? Yes. But like I run my own company and I get to teach at a really cool university and students. I'm like, so it's I'm like that. I feel very fortunate that I know what my motivation is. I know what I'm doing. I enjoy what I'm doing. I set my own parameters, and so I realize how fortunate I am to do that. So I don't really feel like I should be complaining, but also it's just like I'm enjoying what I do. So I feel like that is my balance. Right? So I'll start with that. But we all have different spectrums of what balance can be. Three things that comes to mind. One, so I had to learn how to say no to things. I suck at saying no. I really do. Shonda Rhimes has a book called Years of Yes. And that book catalogs her experience of learning how to say yes to things. Because she likes to say no to things. And so she did this entire year where she just said yes to every opportunity that came her way, every speaking gig, every whatever. And it was all to get her out of her comfort zone, which I thought was really cool. I feel like I should write a book called Years of No, because I'm on this journey of learning how to scale back. And sometimes you just have to say, look, I don't have time for that. What I don't do is I don't just say no. I like to say no, comma, but let me, whatever. So like, maybe you want to invite me to talk and I can't do it, but no, but here's Kiersten, or like, no, but like, whatever. So like, and I do this in my consulting world where, sometimes a client will come up or a prospective client will come up and say, oh, like, we'd like to hire your firm to work on this project. And, if we are tapped out, if we're truly tapped out at the moment, we'll say no, but we have a roster of other consulting firms that we work with, that we trust, that we collaborate with, that we know will get the job done for you in a timely manner. And we'll say no, but here are three people that we can talk to right now. Here are their boundaries, right? So I don't like to just say no. To understand what your boundaries are important, of course. Second is joy, right? So my congresswoman Diana Presley always likes to talk about how joy is an act of resistance. And when she first said that to this years ago, I was like, you're tripping. But then I thought about it, I was like, that is true, right? Because again, as Black folks, as people of color in this country, as any marginalized person in this country, the intent, as we are seeing now, even from Washington, is not just cruelty and chaos, but it's also hurt and trauma, and it's to dig up trauma, and your resistance as joy is something that one infuriates them, but it's also something that they can't take away from you. And so finding whatever makes you happy, hopefully a healthy vice, nothing bad, but like finding the things that make you happy and do it. Like if you like to go on a hike, do that. Like, if you enjoy ice cream, do that. Like, if you love to knit, go knit. Like whatever your thing is, find those things that you enjoy, either doing by yourself in solitude or with your friends or loved ones. And do those things and don't apologize for having fun, even when everything around you looks like a dumpster fire. And then the third thing is just on the point of feeling like you have to carry the load by yourself, as I said earlier, like building coalitions. When you're working on something, whether it's on campus or off campus, whatever, learn how to build a team around you, right? Like, and if you are a leader, then learn how to delegate, right? And that's really important, because if you feel like you have to do everything all the time, one, you're not really a leader, because leaders don't do that. But secondly, you're just gonna burn out. There aren't enough days in a week, there aren't enough hours in a day. At some point, you do need to sleep as well. So like, it's just important to learn how to really share the workload. So Those are the three things that I think we provide.
This next question will bring us back a little bit more to the let's say worldly institutional things, and it comes also a little bit about, I think Kiersten, you had started talking about your work with the Crown and intergenerational collaboration there. Yeah, this next question is like, what role do you guys think cross-generational and cross-sector collaboration plays in political movements? And then to make it even more relevant to right now, like how relevant is that right now, and how important is it right now? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Those realities about cross-generational, cross-sector collaboration, and where space is for that right now.
Example. So right now, we are as a country facing an influx of migrants, obviously from different countries, and certainly in Massachusetts, we've had an influx over the last 2 years of migrants, primarily from the. Now, here's what's been interesting. You have unlikely people that have come together to advocate for the migrants, including the business community. So, business community, the hospital community, and others have said, look, we have a worker shortage in the state. We have a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage of nurses, aides, and medical assistants. We have a shortage of other types of sectors in this state. And we need a diverse workforce. And also, our patients, our clientele, our customers are not all English speakers. So we also need people from other backgrounds, people who can speak Spanish and Haitian Creole and Portuguese and Mandarin, etc. So what we've seen over the last 2 years is, immigrant advocates coming together with the business community, coming together with the faith community, coming together with the education sector, coming together with the government to create these like rapid training programs for these migrants. And like, let's be clear, not all of them are coming here with no background. A lot of them actually have hard and soft skills that can easily make them competitive in the workforce here. And if anything, their only barrier may be legal status or language. And then those that may not have like certain skills that would make them competitive in this economy, they can be trained easily. So we've seen like this really cool coalition of unlikely allies come together to really work on it. So I thought that was really cool to see that, and I've been part of some of that work, and it's really powerful when you see unlikely allies coming together and getting the job done. So there's that, and I think that in every aspect of my work, I try to do things, and this is something I challenge my students. Like when you're talking about a policy issue or you're trying to advocate for something, try to attack it again from every single angle and think through like, well, what will the business community think about this? What will faith community think about this? What will education community think about this? How much is this going to cost? From where are we going to get it, etc. And so just being able to understand those different stakeholders and their interests is really important. So that's just one example that I want to leave you with about how these different sectors came together to address a real urgent issue that's still ongoing, but getting people here, getting them trained and deploying them out into the workforce. That helps us as a state, as a country, but that also helps these newly arriving people get their feet off the ground. I mean, no one wants to sit around and just live in a shelter. They're looking for opportunity, and giving them that opportunity will they also have.
I think to grasp the intergenerational piece, I can speak to 2 examples. But first, this is like a random caveat, but I just think it's really powerful and awesome that like our panel has such a diverse representation of the African diaspora. And I feel like it's cool that how it's in perspective, something like that. But anyway, I think first I think about, to your point, Wanci, the work that I did in high school on the Crown Act. It was twofold. I worked on like the state level to help organizers, older Black women that were already doing the work to push for the Crown Act on the state level. And then I kind of did more independent work on the district level and successfully passed natural hair protections in Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. And I think the beauty of the intergenerational piece was when like I gained mentors. It was really nice to work with them. 2, people just like love working with young people that are involved and care. But 3, again, like I gained new perspective from working with them on things that work, things that don't. Their own experiences being like lifetime organizers and advocates and self-starters. Those are things I still carry with me to this day. And again, like I said earlier, I do think that as young people, we have the passion, we have the energy oftentimes, but we don't have
as much of the wisdom and the crystallized intelligence to know what we should do and not do. Sometimes it is important to have that counsel that's advising you on, you know, I've seen this before in my lifetime of what it looks like to make this decision versus this decision, and take that advice very seriously, especially when it's coming from a genuine place. And the second piece I think about, I just finished an internship with the NAACP Defense Fund, working with voting rights attorneys. And what I really appreciate, to Ymbar's point about like, or I guess to your point in the back about like being called for such a time as this, what I really appreciated post-election, and they're a nonpartisan organization, but what I appreciated was like the day after the election, we had a team meeting, and one of my mentors and the attorneys that was on the team was basically saying, Legal Defense Fund is built for this work. They're the first and foremost civil rights law firm in the country, and litigated Brown v. Board has seen the rise and fall and ebbs and flows of civil rights advocacy in this country. And being in that space, I was standing on the shoulders of civil rights giants and tried and tested movement builders, but also being in that like virtual space with them post-election, like them saying like, we're gonna dig our heels in. We've been doing this work in Southern communities and hostile state legislators for decades. We're gonna keep doing the work with a hostile federal environment as well. So that was very empowering for me because again, like that's the importance of the crystallized intelligence and the wisdom and gaining that from our older community members and older, you know, collaborators in this work. And that's something that I'm gonna take with me as I get older and like actually go into my field. Because I think like everything feels super maybe to y'all it also feels existential. Like, this is a really crazy time. But I don't think it feels especially existential as a young person, like when we had not seen the rise and fall of Jim Crow. We had not seen like the rise of neoconservatism in the 1980s and 90s and how that impacted the most vulnerable communities. We did not even see like 9/11 and the impact that that had on immigrant communities here and like the impacts of that. So I just think that it's really important for, especially like in this college global space that we're in, for those of us that are graduating and moving out of that to like really act as a sponge and soak up all the wisdom and all the advice that we can get from those that have been tried and tested and share it.
Every success that I've had professionally or personally has come as a result of multiracial and intergenerational connections. I can't think of an example when once you sent out these questions of something that I accomplished that did not have young people, middle-aged people, older people. When people say these are unprecedented times, what comes up in my mind is you haven't sat at the feet of people old enough yet. Every coalition I've built, this is not new for many people that I'm surrounded by and that I do work in community with. They have lived through a recession. They have thrived through racism, prejudice, bigotry, sexual assault, institutional and structural violence. They have lived through it all. And by the grace of God, I have had the privilege and honor of like walking a journey alongside them and doing some deep listening. Because there are things that they have tried that actually worked. And we made some progress. And a lot of it is a pendulum. We will make like 10 steps forward and then swing 60 steps back. And then move 4 steps forward and move 3 steps to the side. And so it's in that dance that we're all navigating that we need to actively be listening, learning the examples from the past. Project 2025 is not new. We need to be looking to our international community that comes from the playbook of Hungary, right? So we can't just stay in our own bubble and within our own niche, whether it be age, class, race, gender, ethnicity. We actually have to be working in an expansive coalition and in an open way of listening and learning in order to actually make some change. And as Kristen said, I know the work that I'm doing. I may not see it in my lifetime. I may not even see it in my son's lifetime, but the work that I'm doing, because others have lived through it, I will live through some portion of it and leave some imprint that actually opens up some doors or a window for someone else.
There's so much to learn experientially that will not be, well, we're not gonna be privy to if it's not through somebody's experiences. So one thing that was really present, first of all, when this question was asked is, I just came back from doing a presentation and doing some collaborations in Europe. and I was in Barcelona. I was meeting people from Lithuania who had some interest and wanted to talk about what's going on in the US. And, this is like a architecture conference. So it was advanced architecture, circular design, how we're designing cities. And Europe has had a lot of work in that space that the US has not done because of the different dynamics that we've seen. I feel like in that kind of relationship, like international relationships, there's gaps that we have that we can be informed on when we see their dynamics and what they were able to implement and how they implemented it. And I think beyond that, coming from, engineering and aerospace specifically, there's so many things that can be that are so necessary in being addressed within the aerospace field that are so present in like the political engagement space. Like, I mean, billions of trillions of dollars that are just kind of like following into a certain dynamic of how funds are used within our community that if it wasn't for, cross sector collaboration, these things wouldn't be brought up and folks wouldn't be aware of it because it's something that's so normal to us when we're building like planes and rockets. It's just like, oh, there goes like a few $1 million worth of like some material or some part. When we go to like the overbearing kind of end of people trying to invest something in the community, it's like they're trying to like pick every single penny. It's like, what are you doing this for? What are you doing that for? And just picking at everything that has to do with like diversity or inclusion or equity in any senses. And you're seeing like this clear like hypocrisy in the fields. So it takes people who are in the aerospace field vouching for the things that matter to folks in the other spaces. So when you see yourself in kind of like a multidisciplinary space, lean into those spaces and acknowledge the power of distribution and access that you have for each of the hats that you wear, and see how you can leverage one to advocate for the other. And I think that's a lot of what I'm approaching and learning how to do right now that I've seen, bear a lot of fruit.
So the women on our panel said stuff that I want to really highlight that comes to mind. One is, as a African diaspora, as an immigrant in this country, as a Black immigrant, learning history is so important. And to the point on unprecedented times, when you look at the arc of 400 years of African history in the United States, Black history in the United States, starting with some very dark times. Yes, we've been here before, and we've had presidents who've taken us here before. And I think that's just so important. So like for all of us in this room, just learn your history, never stop being a student of history. Yes, go to museums and read books and read the books that are being banned right now. And talk to people. So like, thank you for that. But the second thing too is and I've read an intergenerational piece because I think everyone here is in college, right? Yeah. So I say this to my students, and at first they're like, "You're weird," but then they understand it. At this age, every single one of you in this room, you are cute. If you understand what I mean. Use your age. Okay. The older you get, you will become ugly. All right. Now here's what I'm saying by this. Right. When you are young, you can reach out to anyone you want, right? Every single one of you has a .edu email account. There is what is called brand equity in that, okay? A lot of brand equity that goes into that. There's a reason why when you graduate from a school, the thing that you want to hold on to is that email account, right? Because it gives you access. And as a young person, you can email any person you want and say, look, I'm a 20-year-old student in college, I'm studying whatever, and I would love your mentorship. I would love to have coffee with you. I'd love an hour of your time. What I learned as a young person was very successful people love talking about themselves, and they will give you time, right? And that's the thing, like, use your age to your advantage. Use that kid. Oh, like, look, this 19-year-old reached out to me. Like, I get so excited. I'm not much older than you. I'm really not. Like, I'm only 33. But like, when a 20-year-old reaches out to me, I am overjoyed. I will literally clear my calendar to speak to someone. And like the amount of students at Tufts who are not my students who reach out, including you, Wanci. Like, 3 years ago, you reached out, like students who are not my students who are like, can I have an service with you? And so, using that is important. It's like once you get 25, 26 and older, people are like, what's your agenda? What's your angle? Like, why are you reaching out to me? What do you really want? What's the ulterior motive, right? So you get uglier as time goes on. So like use that advantage now. And use your age to open doors, right? And seek those experiences and mentors who will be like, yeah, I'm gonna propose to you. And when someone opens the door for you, run through it. Run.
Yeah, so I thank you for because those are things that just came up there. Thank you guys for fielding my questions. I definitely could ask questions forever, especially for this panel. But I do want to give the audience a chance to ask any questions if they have anything that stuck with them. If there's anything about anything these panelists collectively or individually share that you want to touch on or hear a little bit more about. Yeah, you got some space and time to do that. Well,
This is for anyone of you guys. So you guys talked about organizing, mobilizing. Anyone that's done any type of community work or event planning. A lot of people love to come on the Zoom to talk about it, organize, let's do this, let's do that. But when it's actually time to be in the field, the numbers are, you can go from 50 to like 10 people. So through your guys' experience, like in any capacity, what have you guys found is the best way to go for organizing and like just sending things out for actual mobilization that actually have the turnout you expect?
I think like on campus, oh my gosh, I think it's such a big issue. It's not even just an issue with organizing, people are just really busy. But I do think like I've really benefited and enjoyed doing personal outreach. What you have to do, like after a conversation, you have to, whatever tiredness you have, whatever things you have to, you just have to pretend like they don't matter and like do the follow-ups as soon as possible. Because a lot of they send that follow-up email and say, well, let's put the group check together and like just follow up. Which is unfortunate, you know, ideally everybody would have the same like zeal that they did when they were saying all that in the community conversation. But sometimes it's just about capitalizing on the passion that people have for other things in their life get to them. Also, sometimes I just think like that's God's way of protecting you because I do feel like the people that sometimes say the most in those types of conversations have the like least to contribute when the action is actually taking place. So those are my thoughts.
I'll jump in to say, I'll go back to what I started out with, being very clear on purpose, because the work actually doesn't begin on the Zoom call. I think it's really about the relationships that you have prior to the Zoom call. And the most successful things that I've experienced is when the 4 people that are up here actually has a network of 20 on their own, and their friends will ride and rally for them. That's how you get the work done, and that's how you actually move the thing over the line. All of the people on the Zoom call, I will say, if there are 100 people on the Zoom call, 20 people are going to show up and do the thing. But those 20 people, think about what the purpose is of the thing. What are the skills within the group of the 20 people? Can somebody do terms? Right? Can somebody do social media? Does somebody have the voice and the mouth to project? Right? What are the skill sets you actually need to accomplish the purpose of the thing? And then ride with those people. And then those people will normally have the people who ride for them. So you will not engage the 100 from the Zoom call. But your type 20 will actually have 20 people each that they will bring. They will ride the hell out of that and then get the thing done. And the more you succeed, people will come along because everybody loves to be a part of a successful thing. Nobody wants to help build the success. Nobody wants to do the thing that stands in the gap until the opening comes, right? But build that tight group of people who actually have the ability to bring people, and then the movement ultimately will move.
Was it who was, I think it was JFK that said failure is an orphan, but success has many parents, right? Like no one wants to be part of the failure. So what we say, right? So just to add on, saying here's everything. There are different roles, right? And so I used to be frustrated, like, you know, what you're saying is just triggering those sorts of experiences. But like, here's the thing that I've learned over time. Like in any coalition, in any group, like people have different roles, and that's fine. Some like I want you to focus more on quality instead of quantity. Like some are going to be the ones that are actually in the weeds, grinding, doing the work. and then obviously just gonna show up the day of and hold a sign and a protest. And that's okay, right? Like 'cause sometimes that's what we need, right? If we're doing a protest on whatever thing in front of City Hall, like you probably want 2,000 people there. That's not gonna mean 2,000 people are gonna show up to the weekly planning meetings. You don't need 2,000 people, right? Like the more chefs in the kitchen, the busier it gets, right? So like you probably need 5, 10 people. I think it was Margaret Mead that said, never underestimate the power of a small. That's what has changed the world. And so, you know, if you got your 5, 10 people, you're good. Like, you know, just make sure that you have different goals inside, but like, don't think that you need 50 people. Because also that becomes a lot to manage, right? If you're managing 50 or 100 people doing all sorts of stuff, like that becomes chaos. So,
With a lot of ideas and no money.
yeah.
I would add vulnerability is very important and having that top 20. And so it's not just top 20 that knows of you, but knows you by name and story. And they know what you're about, and that's how you can get folks to ride for you for whatever it is. And I've seen that in my own life. And then as a pastor's kid, how can we expect to fill somebody's mind if we can't feed their stomach? Basic, just just kind of a basic thing. But being known by name and story, and then just providing wherever you can. When we're doing some of our community engagement and surveying in Denver, we're providing childcare, food, and we're paying the community collaborators and the local businesses that are working with us just as much as us. And that's kind of the standard that we hold when it comes to empowering community. Yeah.
There's no.
I have a lot of questions sometimes like which one I want to add, but I guess based on everything y'all have said so far, we're really far about the conversation about intergenerational collaboration, cross-community collaboration. And one thing that I've seen lately is that activism has felt very responsive. So like right now, everybody's mobilizing and responding to Project 2025. But on the opposite end, Project 2025 was a concerted effort that was building momentum for years. Like Kiersten talked about the grassroots movement on campus. It's a grassroots movement in and of itself. And so how do we as a community kind of like shift from having a responsive form of activism to having activism that's really rooted in this long-term strategy?
It's an excellent question.
I don't have the answer, but I do think sometimes we have to, I don't know, dang. I did think, what I thought about though is kind of like the position, and this is from a personal perspective, like the Democrats and like left-leaning people, progressive people are in just like this disadvantage. One, because the coalition itself, we're talking about coalition building, like the coalition that is countering Project 2025 is so vast. You have, rural people in like the Midwest, but then like the urbanites and like the suburbanites in like these coastal cities. So I think part of it is gonna have to be like in a broader sense and like the national sense, like what are the common values that we see? Because I feel like as a young person, I'm not sure like what common policy goals that people have kind of in this camp that we can actually write our own Project 2050 or whatever. So I don't know, but I'd love to hear from the other person.
I think we spend so much time talking about things that we are against and not enough time talking about things that we're for. That's part of the problem, right? Like Project 2025 was a multi-year effort. In its 900-page document, there are roughly 150 or so different authors to it, right? No single person wrote this document. And there were a wide group of collaborators. And I think that's really important when you think about like messaging on any issue. It doesn't have to be national, whatever, just local issue, whatever. Start from an aspect of what are you for, what do you stand for, and build out from there. It's easy to know what you're against, right? But when you think about the president and the supporters, they've laid out a vision, not just something that's responsive. And I guess government sort of inherently is responsive, it's reactive, right? A lot of public policy reacts to something that happens. You don't really like to say proactively, but community organizers, activists, people on the ground should be more proactive. I think a lot of that just starts early, as I said earlier, about not feeling what you don't know. It's really just having those conversations. I ask my students all the time. Tufts is like many of the schools that we're from is very liberal, and we have a lot of liberal identified students on campus. And I always ask my students, how many of you have a friend who's of the opposing view? And oftentimes none or one or two raise their hands. And I think that's a disappointment. I think you really do need to branch out. Even if you disagree, just having those conversations and understanding where people come from. I think it was Ashley from the previous panel who talked about bigotry and sort of so the way I would have my spin to that is there is sincere ignorance, right? And again, going back to what you don't know, right? If you don't know something, I mean, I've had friends who said to me, you're the first Black friend that I've actually had. Like they've met Black people before, but like, I'm the first actual person that they befriended, had like a real relationship with. And part of it's like, whoa, but then also like I get it, right? Like if you're coming from situations and contexts across the country, it's not as diverse, right? Like I went to Cambridge public schools, 61 languages are spoken in public schools in Cambridge. My graduating class had 45 languages. And I would tell people like going to school was like going to the United Nations. I was exposed to all sorts of diversity growing up as a kid. So like nothing was threatening to me. But I could totally understand it where if you don't know these things, right? And then automatically I think part of it too, maybe this is my hot take of the evening. Like, I really have a problem with cancel culture. I think just immediately writing something. I mean, if you say something that's inappropriate, don't just write someone off as a racist or a sexist. Like, engage with them and say, well, hey, look, like that thing you said was racist. Maybe you're not a racist, but like maybe that thing you said was. Let me tell you why, right? Because then if we just start labeling people, what's gonna happen? Well, I'm not sexist. I have 30 women friends, and like look at all like you know what I mean. Just you go down a rabbit hole, and I don't think that's like a productive conversation, right? But rather like sitting people down and engaging people. I think we sometimes we stick to our corners. Everybody is just in a defensive posture, ready for a fight, and I think that's part of what's wrong here. It's just we need to actually have these uncomfortable conversations with people that we don't always agree with. We have to learn different perspectives. If not for anything else, it will help you strengthen your own arguments.
I will say I struggle sometimes with what Sam says in terms of not dismissing a person who I perceive can cause me harm. I actively walk in a world where I am open to everyone, but you only have to show me who you are one way. And if I think who you are causes harm to how I need to walk in the world, I will seek to understand, but I have to draw a limit because your motivation in life is to end my life or not see me thrive. I have challenge with that. But across that, I'm open to a lot of different perspectives and ways to be in the world. One of the things that being a Black Hispanic woman has afforded me is just people underestimate you all the time. You walk into an environment where people think you don't know the language and they just say all types of things about you. So there's a level of like tough skin and resilience that I've built just walking in this skin that I walk in. But to answer your question, the thing that has been most helpful, and I think the thing the Trump administration did very well, not Donald Trump, but people surrounding him, is they have been building coalition with unlikely communities this entire time. From the time before he ran in 2016, Trump and Trump agitators and advocators have been in Latinx communities eating food, or the Ymbar, I guess, like coming to churches, providing childcare, sitting down with people listening. What's your pain point right now? And in those conversations with just people, they have built trust. they have built community, and they have garnered votes. So when people say my issue is, I am quick to like sit down and listen and break bread and put in that real work. I spend a lot of time with people, just building with people. Because I want to know who you are, like what motivates you, what's behind the thing that you're asking for. My father is not on the same side of the political spectrum that I am, but I don't cancel my father. He is a Honduran man who has a particular set of experiences that lead him to live the life and have the point of view that he has. I don't dismiss him, but I don't shy away from saying the things that you are saying actually bring home to me and your autistic nephew and this person and that thing, right? So it's not backing away from the conversations. It's being very clear about your values, the things you want to see happen in the world, but also sitting down and getting to know people very deeply. So when I say to Sam, when I say to Kiersten, when I say to Ymbar, say your name, I need you to walk with me and do this thing with me. They are so ready to ride, and that's what happened with Project 2025. They sat with those people every day. The Latinx community moved to the polls for Trump. You know why? They broke bread with those people every day. And when it was ready to push an agenda that now many of them are saying, I didn't realize how this would impact me in this negative way, but they were ready to ride. They rode to the polls. Right? We got to live through the consequences of that now. But I guess I will ask everybody, I will put back on the audience, who are you building with? And what are you building?
I emphasize something that Dean said earlier about starting up, right? So like, this used to happen until I started saying no. I'm very involved in Democratic Party politics and at the state and national level. And in previous elections, especially pre-COVID, I would get politicians that would say, hey Sam, can you take me to that black church? Literally. And or like, whatever. And it's like, am I just like your meal ticket? I'm still walking to the church. And I started saying no because it was clear to me that people were only showing up when it was election time, right? Like I wanted to go to the black church, shake hands and break bread afterwards, just so I can say, oh, I'm running for the election, as opposed to, oh, I'm just here on a random Sunday because it is, or I'm at the mosque on a Friday afternoon just because it is, right? Like, and so like the things aren't showing up. Like one thing that I really get upset about, and this is true for a lot of since you brought partisan question, like a lot of state parties, a lot of state Democratic parties, they only show up every 4 years. And even true in Massachusetts, so you talk about Latinos, Trump overperformed in Massachusetts with Latino communities and what we call gateway cities, sort of more corporate cities across the state. Places that, if you read Part 2025, you'd be like, oh, they're actually voting against their interests. But it's because they had built the relationship. Even in, really blue progressive Massachusetts. So, like, this isn't just some theoretical thing. Like, you have to, as she said earlier, shut up. Like, I think like half the battle is just being consistent, showing up and being in community, not when there's a crisis and not when there's an election, but just because, one of the things that we keep fighting for here in Massachusetts, in the Massachusetts State Democratic Party, we don't have a team of organizers across the state that work for the party. We just don't. Every 4 years when there's an election, we staff up, but like on a regular basis, no. And to make it even more granular, because we're here with a bunch of melanated folks. So every 4 years, or really every 6 years, when Elizabeth Warren runs for office, that's when we have a field office in Roxbury, right in the heart of Black Boston. The Massachusetts Democratic Party is headquartered on Beacon Hill, a block away from the Massachusetts State House, which you could potentially argue makes sense. It's a seat of power. You want an office there, whatever. But I have been advocating for over a decade that we should actually have field offices across the state in communities that we're trying to engage with on a regular basis, and not just when there's election. Right? So like in 2018, when Senator Warren was running for re-election, the state party also was going to have money, so she knows all of it because she's raised. So they have this wonderful field office on Dudley Street in Roxbury. I want to say maybe like 3-minute walk from Union Square Station. And we're there for the ribbon cutting, the kickoff, whatever. And I look at some of the black politicians I'm standing with, and I'm like, this office is going to close the day after election day. They're like, yeah. And I was like, this is a joke. Like, why are we here? And, could you imagine though, like actual continuous organizing in the barber shops, in the convenience stores, in the nail salons, in the houses of worship, like not just like at the cookout, not just like when there's an election, but like every day, right? So like show up, make sure you have that relationship. And then, the policy comes later. Like, even like in lobbying meetings that I have, like for a meeting for an hour, like 90% of the meeting is like serious bullshit. We're just catching up, we're chatting, whatever. Maybe 5-10 minutes dedicated to, oh, this is the bill that I want you to support. I want you to co-sponsor this, budget line item, or that we're gonna amend to the budget, whatever. I mean, that's like a 5-10 minute thing. And sometimes that's even a text message thing. It's not like a serious meeting. But building that relationship is important. So what she said about showing up is like so real, especially for going to politics and organizing. And that's what Democrats really like this agenda, Project 25, whatever, this is Reagan. I mean, this is going back decades, like this isn't, Trump is minister, Trump doesn't matter. Like this is a whole agenda that's been brewing for decades to dismantle the federal government.
I'll say like from a historical perspective, along with that, part of it, the elephant in the room is that like these folks with power have had the resources in the capital and like the means to like cultivate a 900-page document. But not only did they like create this 900-page plan, since the 70s, they've been organizing in gun clubs, in police unions, in right churches. And yeah, I'm not gonna say like the Democrats don't do that. I don't know what they do. I'm a child. But I guess as one of the professors to say collectively freedom dream about the things that we want to see in the world, like what are the spaces that we can go into that like there is opportunity to build that community and say and be authentic and build that trust so that then like when we put the political agendas out there and are gonna ride even if